go for our quintessential opening?
I've already started filming.
Yes, oh yeah, well I don't have to do a hello and a very warm welcome back to the garden because it's a huw's Diaries video. In the OG kitchen garden, haven't been here for about a week, can usually only make it a day a week. So having to make sure that every minute here counts, and extra pressure because we also have to do some filming as well. And so yeah, it's been really, really dry. So kind of just gonna look around at what's been going on and see how things are doing, because I've ended up doing a lot of mulching and I had a quick whiz around and things are actually looking much better than I expected. I prepared for the worst and the worst hasn't happened yet. So we haven't had rain for, it's probably approaching about 5 weeks, which is a lot of time without rain. And things like these seedlings, these are fennel that are coming through quite nicely. Spot of weeding whilst I'm here, multitasking. And it's so bone dry on the surface, but the nice thing is I want to talk to you about dust mulches. So a dust mulch is kind of when the top layer of soil becomes so dry, it almost like comes together to form one amazing bit of insulation. And so as I'm removing this, the soil underneath, you can see that the colour of it is so much darker than the soil on the top. So there is actually a decent amount of moisture within the soil. So it might look dry on the surface, but it was nice to come here and have a little bit of a dig around in a no-dig garden. Yeah, that's right. And see that actually there is a decent amount of moisture. So for seedlings, they're still a bit vulnerable, but for things like the beetroots here, they're going to be more than fine. Oh, I want to talk about this interesting design that we're going to try. So, my colleague Neil, what is...
What the hell is this?
No. A quick one, I wanted to showcase this interesting trellis design that my colleague Neil had seen apparently on Pinterest or something, and thought, let's do it for the sweet peas because they do like to bush out at the top, whereas like I'm not sure there's enough moisture for sweet peas at the moment. But the idea is that these bits of string are kind of going to hold them in, they can grow up and flower at the top. And I think it looks pretty epic, so I just wanted to share it. I don't know whether it works or not, but if you just want a nice like structural abstract feature, you could call it modern art or something, make one of these. Perhaps the most kind of vulnerable type of crop to grow during this dry weather is going to be salads, especially things like lettuce. And so I've actually got 3 different stages of lettuce just in case of bolting. The main thing is I do try and keep these nicely watered. I'm actually going to come through and mulch these with grass clippings. I'm going to show you what's happening in the polycrub with mulching the tomato plants with grass clippings. It's very interesting. But yeah, the idea is that every kind of couple of weeks, I'll just sow a new row of lettuce, make sure it germinates. And so it means even if these only last a couple of weeks, I'll have the next lettuce ready to start harvesting. And I can either do it in rows or blocks in and around the garden. But this is just a simple mixed lettuce seed packet and it looks really nice. So welcome to the polycrub. And this is really kind of coming into its own at the moment. Needs to do a little bit of a clear up, but we've got amazing looking nasturtiums. We've got all of these tomatoes that are starting to grow nicely, and yeah, just making sure that I'm pulling off the suckers as and when I see them. So the main thing to draw your attention to is the fact that I've mulched these tomato plants with grass clippings. Now, bear in mind, we haven't watered these for about a week. And so when I just uncover this layer of grass, I can already see and I can feel the moisture in the soil compared to the soil that just feels bone dry right next to it. And so, yeah, grass clippings are working really well. What I'd say is that It's almost like a saying of make hay when the sun shines, but cut grass when it's still green, because there's a lot of grass out there that's starting to turn yellow. So anywhere where there's maybe in partial shade some nice luscious grass, if you do want to do a grass cut and mulch some of your plants with grass clippings, it's going to massively lower the amount of water that you need to add to your plants. And if you're trying to cut down, either you've got a water bill or there's a hose pipe ban, something like grass clippings can mean you have tomatoes or you might not have as many as you wanted. And so yeah, what we're going to do is fill in all of the gaps with mulching with grass clippings and maybe plant a little bit more basil over here. So I wanted to mention about all of these leeks here that we've left in because of what's going to happen in terms of the flowers. The leek flowers are really exciting. There's a lot of, it's quite a trendy thing at the moment about making like a chive flower vinegar, etc. I think Sam's done far more exciting things with chive flowers. But it's the same approach with leeks. You've got that beautiful taste from the leek flowers, and it's so amazing for attracting the pollinators. You can almost just grow a patch of leeks as an ornamental. I've got a little patch in the further down the garden just for that. But here we're just growing the leek flowers actually for a food crop. And so yeah, this is going to be full of these like big allium kind of pink flowers with bees all around the place. I'm really excited as an alternative harvest to leeks. It's the first new potato of the season. Oh, I got dust in my eye. I want to talk about the foxgloves. So, yeah, I am a massive fan of digitalis. Digitalis is probably the only Latin plant name that I know. I'm not so into the Latin names. It sounds a bit pretentious sometimes. But just look how beautiful this is. And so foxglove is a biennial. So the first year it focuses on creating all of the leaves. The second year it then puts out these amazing flower spikes. This is just one plant. And so I like to just, it is poisonous. Don't eat it, but it's not going to affect any of my edible crops around the place. And the bumblebees absolutely love it. There's one that's flying about here at the moment. Just oh, sorry, I might have scared it off a bit. Maybe it's a bit camera shy. So what I do usually kind of October, November time is I go around the garden when it's a bit emptier and I find all of the first year foxglove plants. I pot them up into pots, overwinter them in a polytunnel, and then the following spring I can plant them out around where I want a little bit of colour, just like here. And I really think it adds so much to this little nook within the garden. So my focus this year is kind of keeping this garden a little bit more simple and focusing on the things that I really want to grow, because if I can only make it here maybe like a day a week, then I need to make sure that I never feel like it's going out of control. So at the moment it feels good. Yes, granted, need to do a bit of watering, but I'm pleased with how everything is starting to come together. And so the project for later on today is I've got a couple of gaps, a couple of areas like here, where I'm going to plant 2 or 3 squash plants, because they're almost like a nice way, if you've got a patch of bare ground and you just want a nice easy way to fill it, I'm going to plant some squash, I'm going to mulch it with some more grass clippings, and then that little bit of space is going to be occupied. And then I've got all sorts of other seedlings to dot around the place. But yeah, this year it's not really following a planting plan, it's just thinking, okay, I love onions, let's make sure we get some onions in. The other thing I'm going to be doing today is direct sowing some more carrots. So here I have Ceredigion runner beans. I've got a couple of wigwams with these as well as an A-frame, and these are starting to put on a nice amount of growth. I've put a borage here just in the corner to add a bunch of colour, And then in front, I adore cauliflower, and so that's why there's a bunch of cauliflowers that have been planted. And then kind of on the very edge of the bed, I've also decided to put a tumbling tom tomato. I'm being a little bit more brave with tomatoes this year, especially growing them outside. And so I thought, yeah, I'll put one there. So just a bit of an update on the hotbed. As you can see, I've got a couple of squash in here now. There isn't anything else growing. I'll actually pop it in the center because this is made primarily out of ramule chipwood with some used coffee grounds and a bit of duck bedding. And yeah, just turning the dial up now, it's registering at about 38 degrees Celsius. And so it's amazing to think that in June, it is still producing a fairly decent amount of heat. And so with these two squash plants, I'm going to train them to kind of cascade down this outside. And then on the back, the idea is to plant some outdoor cucumbers to grow up a little frame, and maybe just in the middle, some extra salad plants. Kind of just thinking out loud here a bit in terms of how I'm going to approach the next couple of weeks, because there's a tiny bit of rain on forecast, but it's like 40% showers for an hour. That is not going to do anything. And so with exception to maybe like the carrots and a lot of the squash, rather than continuing to put in more things, I'm actually going to spend a bit more time focusing on mulching and watering what is already in the ground, because if I can prioritize what is already growing and make sure that that works out really nicely, rather than trying to spread out too thinly, because I don't want like the whole garden to be a little bit of like a half as good as what it should be. I'd be happy if half the garden is reaching its absolute maximum potential, because there's always things that I can do like cover crops in between. And I'm also going to do a bunch of seed sowing later this week in the hope that in 3 weeks time, 3 to 4 weeks time, that there's been enough rain that then I can plug any final empty gaps. So just love how this grapevine has just shot back into life. It's creating already a nice jungle feel here in the solar tunnel. And it's June. There's, as I mentioned before, going to be doing a bunch of sowing. If you're looking for quite a comprehensive list of what to sow this month, this video right here is the one to watch.